entire north is threatened.
By the English king. Then I want to see if this fight is mine.
I heard, Sam, that you looked out your window today and saw yourself on a billboard for this series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't often, rely on outside things for gratification, but to see that was quite overwhelming.
Pretty cool.
Certainly
Leo,
sent it straight to my family.
when you get the role, like you auditioned for it, obviously this is a question for both of you. You get the role. Did you begin to research, because both of your characters are legendary? I mean, how do you sort of go into it? Did you do a lot of research, and how do you get into that Viking spirit at that point?
Yeah, I certainly dove into some of the history, and I think that's one of the joys of doing a historical role, is that you learn a bit about a period that you otherwise wouldn't learn about. And so, yeah, I read up on the Kings and King Canute's invasion and realized that history and the changing of power was an incredible story. But one of the nice things that for my portrayal of Harold, this is sort of an origin story in many respects. And we know about Harold Hardrada in the later stages of his life. Here we got to play with the idea of his youth and play with a concept that maybe he had a best friend in this strange Greenlander who arrived and would become Leif Erikson, the man to discover America.
For myself, I remember exactly where I was sitting in history class when I was learning about Leif Erikson and Eric the Red. I think it was like one of the only exams I got an A in, actually. So research started pretty early, but I dived certainly into a lot of the sagas and a lot of the history. And I was also always fascinated with the mythology in the pagan world. But for me, it was important to strip it back and tell a very human story about a man trying to find his way in the world and, simply looking after the people he loves.
Did I read that you used to watch the original Viking series with your dad? What can original OG fans expect from this series? How will it set itself apart? Or what is in there for Vikings fans, the OGers?
The OGs, yeah, no, I'm an OG. I really enjoyed the original series, and I think they can certainly expect a lot of action. And we certainly kick it into gear. I mean, Michael Hurst was an amazing showrunner for the original series. We now have Jeb Stuart, who, wrote Die Hard and The Fugitive. And so we kind of welcome a new, absolutely, bow down to him. We welcome a bit of a gear shift in the action realm. And as Leo says, that there are certainly echoes of the names and the greats that lived before us. And so I guess we hope to continue and honor the legacy that has been laid down before us.
And for you, Leo, I want to ask, who in the cast got most into the fighting scenes? I know you learned a lot about combat in that. Who was the best at it? Like, who really took it to a level, like the next level? And then also you had...
I told you, they're going to come kill me. I can't tell you that. It's a closely guarded secret.
I won't tell anybody.
No. I don't believe you.
I actually think like Frida really got into it. And like, I remember her telling, like, she'd be doing roles in her bedroom, like trying to practice for it.
And Louisa as well, in that first battle, she unleashed primal energy that you could feel. But I think the point is that everybody, once they get on those battlefields and you're given the tools by our stunt team of what the steps are going to look like, but once you're there on the battlefield and the adrenaline kicks in, everyone just goes full pelt.
One last question for you, Leo.
Yep.
You balance the fighting with the love scenes. What's more choreographed, the love scenes or the fighting scenes?
He's a lover and a fighter. What's more choreographed? I think, the fights are more choreographed, because if you get the fights wrong, then you're going to have an axe in your head or something. But no, doing those scenes with Frida was really nice, because Harold's a berserker and a warrior and a speech giver. But those intimate, vulnerable moments that he shares with Freydis are the kind of variety that you really look for as an actor in a role.
You're a long way from home, Freydis. I am on a mission to learn my destiny. Train her. Let's go again.
You're both amazing in this series. Amazing. One thing that I found fascinating to learn about the Viking society is they were very, more than maybe other societies at the time, egalitarian, where women could own land, they could have autonomy over their marriages. For each of you, how did it inform your character? I'll start with you, Caroline.
Well, you're right about that. And being Scandinavian, both Frida and I are born in Stockholm is part of our heritage, our history. You know, we know a lot about Viking history and the female aspect of that. So that was very sort of appealing to the characters because like 1,000 years ago, we can relate to what it was like to be a woman. And then, you know, stuff happened, which wasn't that easy being a woman. So to be in that sort of scenery together with Frida and form the characters, they have a goal, they have a mission together. And it's not about sort of a husband or children or whatever. It's about a goal. It's about a belief together. That has been an amazing journey. And I'm so, so proud to be a part of that.
Yeah. And for you, Frida, I mean, physically watching you do those fight scenes, I mean, you just gave yourself over to it. You were incredible. A lot of your co-stars today are saying you were the best fighter of anybody. You took it the most seriously. You got into it.
Wow, that's very kind of them to say. No, but I think for me, understanding Frida's, it was a very physical aspect. You know, she grew up in a very harsh reality. She comes from a very remote place where she's, ever since she was little, had to hunt for her own food. It's been a struggle. She is a fighter. She's a survivor. And I think what maybe sets Freydis apart from everyone else is, you know, men maybe are, you know, they're trained to fight. Freydis isn't, she's not a trained fighter. She's not like Harold, who had a squire since he was a child. He's a prince, you know, learning how to fight like a little boy. For Freydis, maybe because she is a victim and she's a survivor of this horrific, you know, a sexual assault, she comes, you know, she fights with her heart. And that's what I loved about playing this character, that maybe it's not the most technical, maybe she's not the most elegant or the most skillful, but if life knocks her in the teeth, she's going to just spit the teeth out and stand up and go, come again. What else can you throw at me? And I love that. I think it's so important that we get to see that on screen. So I'm really, really excited for that journey.
For fans of the original series, what kind of epic action can they expect from this series? And also, just personally, what kind of training went in? Like, what was your, I know you had axe training. What was your sort of favorite aspect of it all? What do you think you're the best at this point?
Well, I think for me, what I was really thankful that now, you know, towards the end, we can pick up any weapon and fight with it. We started with my little knife and, you know, fighting with, you know, I've killed people with anything, like with my bracelet. And not a lot of people can say that they strangled a 6'7" man with this bracelet, but hey, I can.
You absolutely can. And Caroline, for you, your character, she rules in a different way. I think of all the characters, she sort of has the most calm demeanor, but she has a power. Like, you do not want to mess with her. She becomes a mentor figure to Freydis. Can you sort of talk about how you went about differentiating yourself from the other characters in the series?
Well, being like a fierce, strong leader as Jarl Håkan, I figured like she's seen it all. She's not a young woman. She's traveled, she's raided, she's conquered stuff. She speaks passionately about her young days when she used to, etc. So I figured this woman she's seen it all, you know, and she's so calm, cool, and collected within her power. And a woman like that, you don't have to raise your voice because you have the power. When you walk into that, you have the power. You know what you're doing. Plus, I think one of the core main things of her, she's not afraid to die. She's not afraid of death. And that's how I try to portray the character. She's not scared. I mean, she's so headstrong also in her beliefs. So she knows she's going to Valhalla. But if you play a character who's not afraid to die, you kind of scrape up all those and you have like that strongness. That's what's, you know, that's what you see.
Now you are here because you are Vikings!
My first question for you both is, obviously you're playing real life historical figures. How deep a dive do you go into when you're preparing for the role?
Well, yeah, you have to do a certain amount. You know, when you're lucky enough to play a historical character like this, there's obviously a lot of research that's out there already done for you to a certain extent. All you have to do is pick up a book and take it in. So it's a pleasure to do it, really, you know. They're interesting characters in their own rights, and that's why there was a show beforehand called Vikings, and that's why there's now a Vikings Valhalla. These guys are interesting and worthwhile.
I feel like with King Canute, he's very complex. I don't know whether to like him or not, but with Olaf, I feel like it's what you see is what you get. You know exactly who he is. Do you think that is fair? And how was it building that relationship between the two of you? Because eventually we know that the two of you are very much at odds.
I think Canute's pretty multi-layered in his approach. He likes to show different faces to different people. Whereas I think with Olaf, kind of what you see is what you get. He's pretty hardcore.
Do you concur, Jóhannes?
Well, what you see is what you get to an extent. Then there are twists and turns there, which is quite nice. And as to building the relationship between Canute and Olaf and different characters, and relating to what you were asking about the historical aspect of it, on the day you always have to be careful to focus on the scene that you're doing and not be clouded with too much information. Like in my case, the character he becomes a saint in the Catholic Church after his death, but that doesn't really help me act out a scene. You know, how does that information help me play a scene? It really doesn't. But it is nice to sort of familiarize yourself with the history of the characters, and it does help you to an extent. But on the day, you have to be focused on the scene that you're doing.
Let's talk about on the day, like the London Bridge scene. It was so intense for people who are original Vikings fans of the original series. I mean, I think this is just, the pacing is different. Jeb has talked about building a completely different world. But for you as an actor, when you're on set and you're filming a scene like that, can you talk about like the adrenaline rush, how much training goes into it? How well do you sleep that night when you go to bed? Is it very cathartic for you as an actor?
No, I would say seeing it put together is cathartic, because on the day it's stretched over 2.5 weeks. It's 4 different locations. I'm on a boat in that sequence, and I don't see any bridge. I've never seen the bridge with my own eyes, and the bridge doesn't exist. It's in 4 different pieces. And so for us, we're just going through each little setup that has been laid out and planned. And you go through the motions. And then when you see the assembly, that's when you go, wow, they did it. And, I'm in there, but they did it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. I mean, who of the cast members, I'm asking kind of everybody in the cast today, who of the cast members fully immerse themselves into the fight training the most, would you say?
Frida Gustavsson of Sweden, hands down, without fail.
Really? I mean, that's been the consensus so far.
Has it? Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me.
She's the boss lady.
She would bring everyone to shame with her amazing work ethic. She's amazing. She's my favorite by far. I'm sorry, Bradley, but she is.
I agree.
Vikings are preparing for an invasion. What do you intend to do?
Fight.
I was very excited to talk to you because you're one of my favorite characters because he's very crafty.
Thank you. Well, we try, we've got to keep people guessing. You've got to have long-term plans of survival in this world of Vikings. Otherwise, well, God forbid.
Well, that's my whole first question for you. I mean, he's a shrewd political player. What do you think his number one rule is for surviving in that world?
Patience.
I would not have thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, but that's how he gets away with it. He thinks about stuff. He doesn't act accordingly. He doesn't go, there's an axe, I'm going to chop that guy in the face. I've been explaining this to other people. It's sort of like chess. Like if season 1 is him setting up all the pieces on the board, then season 2, he makes one move. And then season 3, we'll see what happens next.
And that's the guy that wins. But your character, he really does play more with his mind than with his physical brute strength, like a lot of, the characters on this show. How delicious for you as an actor is it to sort of play the duplicity of a character?
It's really good fun. I mean, that's the truth of it. It's knowing that you have an arc that will sustain it as well. It's knowing that you can not mislead the audience, but not feel like you have to push them in a certain direction at any one time. You can be slow, like the patience that I say Goblin have. As an actor, you can trust in the story writer. You can trust in Jeb to know that as this thing unravels, everyone will go, oh yeah, he's cool.
Did you ever surprise yourself on set with something that sort of occurred that you didn't expect?
The things that I've always liked sort of sneaking in, and some of them have made the edit, is him being lighter and a bit cheekier than people might expect. Like, I think he's got a devilish sense of humor. I think you'd have to survive under all those chords. There's one particular beat in episode 7, which I think is my single greatest work to date. And I'm still stunned that they left that in the edit.
What moment?
It's when I'm talking to Forkbeard, and it looks like everything might be off for Godwin, but there's just a short little moment. He almost turns to the camera and just sighs, but it's a funky, it's a blink and you miss it, but I'm really proud of it. It's ridiculous.
Now I'm going to go back and rewatch it. You almost broke the fourth wall. So in that sense, then how does he really feel about dealing with a child king?
I think he is prepared to give a child king the same opportunity that he's prepared to give a Viking king. He's prepared to let them make their first moves and to see if they are worthy of the wait. And unfortunately, quite a lot of people in this universe aren't necessarily as strong, confident, and good as leading as they think they are.
You've been known to play in a period drama or two between the White Queen and other projects you've been involved in, but why was
Just
this
a few.
role? Just a few. So you're used to the but how do you think the Viking world differs from those types of from the other shows that you've worked on, and why was this role perfect for you as an actor?
I think I'm a boy, so I've always loved Vikings. I think there's something cool about that. So that appealed to me in the first place. So the idea of long ships and big shields and all of that, that's a tick. When you then realize that it's written by Jeb Stuart, who wrote Die Hard and The Fugitive, then that's the second pretty massive tick. And if you haven't said yes by then you're an idiot. But the third tick comes along when you realize that you're basically playing the Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman part of the series, and you go, yeah, I'd be an absolute moron not to do this. So it's that thing. Yes, I've been in a lot of period dramas, and that's because I love doing it. But in this instance, there's a wink to Godwin all the way through this, and a really interesting character arc, which is based in history of a character that I don't think many people will have heard of. And that's all to his absolute triumph as a survivor.
It is our blood! It is Viking blood!
My first question for you is, being that you're the writer of Die Hard and The Fugitive, a feature film action writer, how do you, when you're doing many, many episodes and you manage to do it, keep that pace of like an action film? Because it really doesn't let up. And how do you determine how you're going to pace, a grand series like this?
Well, this was a really fun series to think about like that. And it's so funny you should mention that, but pace was one of the things that we talked about from the beginning. It's like, how do we do this? How do we tell the story with the camera? Instead of having two people sit there in a room and saying, I love those flowers, that's great, and you need to pick up the flowers, and we kind of go. It's really terrific to have filmmakers who, one, appreciate that, and two, have the skills to actually do that. And so the short answer is lots and lots and lots of planning. I mean, that's all I can tell you, lots of planning so that we can get it all in.
Well, speaking of the planning, I'm just thinking about like the London Bridge scene. Quick question for you. London Bridge is falling down. Does that come from this moment, like the Viking?
It does. I mean, there are many different variations of it, but pretty much most people will tell you that nursery rhyme came from the Vikings tearing it down.
Who knew when you were a kid singing that?
That's right. Who knew? I didn't know. I didn't know until I got into the research of it.
So speaking of research, something like, I think your crew had to build 5 or 6 bridges to actually film the one London Bridge falling down. How satisfying was it to demolish it? Or was it sort of devastating?
It was actually very sad. I went out to watch 2 of them go under the bulldozer, but it was, and I kept thinking, maybe we're going to need this again. So, but you need a certain part of a bridge for a certain aspect, for a certain shot. And like I said, Tom Conroy, our production designer, is just fabulous. And so each of those pieces had different parts that we had to shoot. And when you see it all put together, it's just magic.
It's a pretty spectacular scene. There's a lot of spectacular scenes. I mean, there's the initial scene where they're coming across on the boat. Practically speaking, how challenging was that? How practical was it, and how much CG was involved?
Well, we did shoot that on a tank, but I have to tell you, it was a lot of water, a lot of cold. It was Ireland, as you can tell. You know, the cast were fantastic. You know, as they probably told you, that it was cold, it's damp, it's really wet, and they did it again and again and again and again and again. And we had that boat on gimbal so that they're really, you know, they're really riding some incredible, you know, vertical and then being dropped down. So it was a fun to watch when you're dry and standing on the sidelines.
Amazing. I know you're working on finalizing some of the scenes and episodes I haven't seen. I've seen the first 8, but amongst our crew at Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of us were asking, like, are we going to see Eric the Red? Are we going to see William the Conqueror? What are your plans? What can you tease?
Well, I can tease all of that, but I can't tell you much detail about it right at this particular point. But I did, one of the things that drove me about the Leif and the Freda's character was, and you see it a lot in season 1, is where did they come from? And the answer to that is Eric the Red. And, you know, you see that part of Leif who he's trying to push it away, that sort of dark underbelly that his father has, and that he sees in his sister so accurately. Right. So, yeah, there's some really great stuff out there over the horizon.
I know you've talked about the original Viking series. I'm curious if Michael Hurst has seen your first 8 episodes, if he's seen it, his reaction to it. And you said that it's like almost like apples and oranges. They're 2 totally different series. So can you explain how they're different?
Look, I was a fan of Michael's series. So I wanted, as a fan, I really wanted to not disappoint that group of people like myself. At the same time, I really, you know, I wanted an audience that didn't know Vikings, that didn't know a Viking from a Saxon, to be able to just fit right into the story and go without having to see all those other episodes. That was really important to me, because I think that some of the stories that we're telling were very different from the stories that were in the original. So it's a dance that I had to do. But look, my wife produces Broadway musicals, and she loves the story. She's not a Viking, you know, but she's caught in because the stories, I think, are compelling and they're relevant to what's going on right now. So that's a good litmus test for me, Nikki. If that works, I know it'll work for other people.